Bosnian officials have uncovered what they believe is the country's largest mass grave. The remains of 360 people have been recovered in the northwestern village of Tomasita. The chief investigator says more than 700 bodies may be buried there. It's believed Bosnian Serbs killed the victims during the civil war in 1992. The discovery of the grave underscores the problem of locating and identifying people who go missing in conflicts. Now, a conference at The Hague is for the first time tackling this issue, but it goes further than just the Balkans. In Colombia, about 64,000 people are missing from the decades-long fight between the government and the rebel groups. There are no firm numbers on those missing in Iraq, but human rights groups estimate it's between 250,000 to 1 million people. Many vanished during Saddam Hussein's regime. And rights groups say 20,000 people are missing from North Korea's labor camps. Now, Paul Brennan is at the conference in The Hague with more.
It's estimated that since World War millions of people have gone missing around the world as a result of a whole variety of reasons. You can talk about natural disasters, international wars, internal conflicts, as well as the effects of criminal gangs and human trafficking. And it's not just a historic problem. Joining me from the Damascus Center for Human Rights is Dr. Radwanzadeh. Now, Syria is a case in point. Just how great is the problem of missing persons in Syria at the moment, and how difficult is it for you to tackle it while the conflict still rages?
Yeah, right. It's actually one of the high priority of any transitional government in the future. A huge number of missing. The estimate number is almost 50,000, because we have two waves of the missing. The first wave in the 80s, where actually 17,000 has been missing during the conflict between the security forces and the Muslim Brotherhood at that time. And since the uprising started in March 2011, we have an estimate of 30,000 went missing. And the more difficult, as you mentioned, that the conflict is still ongoing. Then the point here, how to put strategies, how to put programs and actions to start looking to the issue before I actually ended up. Because sometimes you have to take lessons from other conflicts to start early thinking, at least to be able to tackle the crisis in that number.
The International Commission for Missing Persons isn't operating in Syria. It simply can't because of the circumstances on the ground. But as you say, plans are already afoot to try and tackle the problem of missing persons when the conflict eases. Where are the priority areas for you? What kind of things could be done quickly?
What we're thinking actually to have help from the ICMP to start working, getting some samples from the relatives of the missing persons, especially in the camps areas in Turkey, in Jordan and Lebanon. Start working with the families of the missing persons, collect samples, testimonies and all of that. Then you are building the data, which is the most important thing in the future in getting the information about the missing, building central data.
And just how important is it to tackle the problem of missing persons? It's not just a human tragedy, is it? I've heard over and over again from delegates here at this conference that without resolving the issue of the missing persons, then it's very difficult for countries to put their past behind them and move forward politically.
Right. Even that, I said in my speech that tackling the issue of the missing persons will be the first bridge to reach the reconciliation. The reconciliation, actually, it's a process, and it has to start in discriminatory policy regarding the missings. It doesn't matter, don't discriminate who's fighting with which side. When you start with this policy, will be the first step toward the end work of the reconciliation.
Dr. Radwanzadeh, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. It's extraordinary perhaps to realise that there isn't one single body, one standing body that tackles the problem of missing persons. Generally when there are natural disasters and conflicts, processes are put in place on an ad hoc basis. The point of this conference here in The Hague is to try and establish a standing body so that that problem can be resolved. Back to you.
Paul Brennan there reporting. The Mexican government has formed a task force to combat the growing number of kidnapped migrants. Mexico's Human Rights Commission estimates that around 22,000 people are abducted each year. Adam Rainey reports from Mexico City.
Another meeting for Ana Enamorado filled with hope. The Mexican government assigned her this lawyer to help track down her missing son. She hasn't seen Oscar since he left their small village in Honduras 6 years ago and to work in the U.S. Like many missing migrants from Central America, he'd left behind few clues. The last time she heard from Oscar was 3 years ago. He called her from a ranch where he was working in western Mexico.
I have to find Oscar, my son. That's why I took the decision to move here and leave my country and come to live in Mexico.
We first met Ana in 2012 when she and dozens of other mothers took a caravan across Mexico. They wanted to find their children and draw attention to the problem of Central American migrants who've gone missing in Mexico. When the other mothers went home, Ana stayed on to keep searching for Oscar. Mexico's National Human Rights Commission estimates that 22,000 migrants are kidnapped every year. Many are extorted by gangs and corrupt police for cash. Some are forced to work for the same criminals who kidnap them. And an untold number are killed or never heard from again. There have been so many murders, violent crimes, and disappearances across Mexico that the government was pressured to open a special victim support bureau to deal with the problem. For the most part, federal resources like these go unused by the state governments given the job of finding the thousands of people who've simply disappeared. So the work falls to family members, usually mothers with little money and little education. For Ana, it meant moving from a tiny village to one of the world's biggest cities and finding a job, a sign of her strength and commitment to her son.
I'm not leaving Mexico until I find out what happened to my son. I have to know what happened to him.
Alone in a foreign land, she carries on in the hope she'll have an answer soon. Adam Rainey, Aljazeera, Mexico City.
For the first time, the U.S. Secretary of State has publicly admitted the National Security Agency may have overstepped the mark in its intelligence gathering. He was speaking via video